My name is Gianna, and I'm here to tell you that being born into a wealthy family isn't always as glamorous as it seems. Despite the financial comfort, my early years were anything but a fairy tale. From the moment I arrived, I seemed to be more of a burden than a joy to my family, particularly to my mother, Madison. I was a restless infant, always crying, rarely sleeping through the night. Madison struggled to cope with my incessant needs. "Can't you just be quiet for 1 minute?" she would often snap, her voice sharp and cutting. My father, Charles, was the polar opposite of my mother. He was the warmth and kindness of our home. Every evening, he would rescue me from my mother's frazzled arms with a gentle smile, calling me his princess and creating a safe haven from the tension. He'd walk me around our large, echoing house, sharing details of his day as if I could grasp every word, his voice always soothing. Dinner times were particularly strained. My younger sister Anna, who arrived 2 years after me, was everything I was not, quiet, serene, and the picture of what my mother desired in a child. She was doted upon and praised, the golden child, while I was often met with comparisons and dissatisfaction. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" my mother would lament. It hurt, but my father was always there to soften the blow, insisting that my spirited nature was not a flaw but a part of who I was. As I grew, the differences in how my parents treated Anna and me became even more pronounced. My father became my ally, teaching me simple tasks like setting the table or folding laundry, which became our shared moments. When I questioned why Mom seemed to favor Anna, my father would sigh, pausing in his chores, and offer explanations that spoke of love's complex expressions. He suggested that some people find it difficult to show their affection openly and that my mother had her struggles. The disparity extended to our birthdays. My celebrations were subdued, marked by simple cakes and quiet gatherings, while Anna's birthdays were extravagant, filled with laughter, presents, and attention. As I matured, this division within our family deepened into a chasm that was hard to ignore. It felt as if we lived in two separate worlds within the same house. My mother's world revolved around Anna, with me merely existing on the periphery. "Gianna, clean up your sister's toys from the living room," my mother would command, preparing to take Anna to her ballet classes, as if it were the most natural expectation. "Why doesn't she clean up after herself?" "She's not a baby," I would protest, the injustice of it all leaving a sour taste in my mouth. My protests, however, often fell on deaf ears, deepening the divide and my sense of isolation within my own home. This imbalance shaped my childhood, crafting a narrative of favoritism and resilience in the face of familial challenges. "Because I ask you to, so just do it and skip the complaints," my mother would command sharply, her words slicing the air with finality. In our household, her rules were absolute, and according to her, Anna could do no wrong. For me, school became my sanctuary, a place where I was known for my own merits, not just as Anna's older sister. I had my circle of friends and my achievements, but the disparity of my home life still cast a long shadow over these small freedoms. Listening to classmates chatter about family trips and outings, which were foreign concepts at my home, stung deeply. According to Mom, such activities were frivolous expenses, even though funds always seemed available for Anna's new dresses or ballet lessons. "You're wearing that to schools?" Anna would sneer, eyeing my worn jeans and faded sweater as she flaunted her new backpack. "What's wrong with it?" I'd retort, feeling a flush of embarrassment. "It just looks old, that's all," she'd reply nonchalantly, her tone dripping with disguised disdain. Despite the tensions at home, Dad remained my steadfast supporter. In the evenings, he'd assist with my homework or we'd engage in small projects around the house. It was during these moments I felt truly appreciated. "Gianna, pass me that screwdriver, please," he'd request as we mended an old dresser.
"Here you go, Dad."
"Why doesn't Mom see me the way you do? Why am I always left out?" I would ask, my voice cracking with frustration and sorrow. Dad would pause, wiping his forehead. "Life's not always fair, kiddo. But you've got to play the cards you're dealt. Keep your head up and do your best." Things will work out, you'll see. His advice was sincere, but it barely eased the sting of witnessing Anna bask in Mom's undivided affection. On the rare occasions Mom did notice me, it was usually to offer criticism or make unfavorable comparisons. "Gianna, why can't you keep your room as tidy as your sister's?" she would criticize during her brief inspections. "Maybe because I actually use my room for more than just sleeping," I'd snap back, my retort a blend of jest and defiance, masking my deeper hurt. "A smart mouth won't get you anywhere. Try to be more like your sister," she'd reply sternly, her expression hardening further. Realizing that expecting anything different from Mom was futile, I shifted my focus toward my future. "Just a couple more years, Gianna. Hang in there," I'd whisper to myself at night, dreaming of the day I could leave and forge my path, one where I wasn't relegated to a supporting role in my own life. As graduation neared, Dad and I held more serious discussions about my future, always out of Mom's and Anna's earshot. "I want you to go to college. I've been setting some money aside for you," Dad revealed one evening while we were doing the dishes. "Really? But Mom said we couldn't afford it because of Anna's college fund," I responded, skepticism laced with frustration in my voice. "We'll figure something out for you. Don't worry about your mother," Dad assured, though concern creased his brow. The thought of college became my lifeline, a beacon of hope for a new beginning. But Mom had other plans, blatantly dismissing my aspirations during one of her blunt declarations. "Gianna should just stay and work. We need to save for Anna," she announced one day, her tone devoid of any room for discussion or debate. "But Mom, I've been dreaming about going to college for as long as I can remember," I protested, my voice a quiet, desperate whisper. "No, I've already made up my mind. You'll stay here, work, and contribute your earnings to the family," Mom retorted sharply, her decree slicing through my hopes like a guillotine. The finality of her words was the catalyst I needed. I couldn't let my dreams be crushed that easily. The day after graduation, I packed my belongings quietly. Before dawn, I scribbled a note for Dad, hoping he'd understand, and slipped out of the house, the early morning air as cold as the resolve in my heart. I moved into a small room above a local cafe, where I began working immediately, grabbing every shift I could get my hands on. In the evenings, I took a second job at a nearby store, stashing away every cent I earned. Dad would drop by occasionally, secretly handing me a little extra cash. "Keep this for your college fund, Gianna. It's not much, but it's a start," he'd whisper, handing me an envelope thick with crumpled bills. Each night, after my shifts, I'd count my savings, laughing to myself. "Look at you, Gianna, like a gremlin hoarding over a treasure," I'd joke to myself, the coins and bills piling up, each one a small victory towards my independence. Years of relentless work, living frugally on canned beans and toast, finally paid off. I saved enough to cover my first year at the local college, where I enrolled to study interior design. That first semester tested every limit. I attended classes by day and returned to the cafe at night. My determination bore fruit when one of my design projects not only won a local competition but also earned me a scholarship that covered my tuition for the rest of my degree. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly living, not just surviving, I mused, as my boss at the cafe held up the local paper announcing my award. "It looks like those long nights at your drafting table really paid off, huh?" Marty, my boss, remarked with a grin. "Yeah, it seems like they did," I agreed, relief washing over me. Quitting my second job felt like a luxury, allowing me to focus all my energy on my studies and my job at the cafe, dedicating myself to what I truly loved. College flew by in a whirlwind of late nights, copious amounts of coffee, and unbridled creativity. I thrived in this environment, surrounded by peers who shared my passion. By the time I graduated, I had secured a position with one of the city's most prestigious interior design firms. It felt surreal, like a dream come true. The job was everything I hoped for, and more. As I immersed myself in my career, spending long hours sketching and bringing visions to life, the constant screen time and stress began to take their toll. Seeking an outlet, I started running in the park next to my apartment each morning. It wasn't anything intense, just enough to clear my head. However, I soon realized my old sneakers weren't up to the task. One quiet morning, I visited a specialized sports store to find better running shoes. The store was almost empty, a few early birds milling about. As I browsed the aisles, a sales consultant approached me. Looking for something specific, or just browsing? He asked, his demeanor casual yet confident. Running shoes. I need something durable, not something that'll fall apart after a week, I replied, trying to sound informed though I was out of my depth. He chuckled. I think I can help with that. What's your mileage like? Pretty amateur. Just trying to maintain my sanity with a morning run, I confessed, feeling a bit embarrassed. No worries, we've all got to start somewhere. He reassured me with a smile, ready to help me find the perfect pair. We've all been there, he said with a reassuring smile, leading me to a display of running shoes that seemed more advanced than anything I'd ever worn. We spent the next half hour discussing the various merits of different brands and the types of support they offered. It was evident that he was well-versed in his field, and surprisingly, I found myself enjoying the conversation far more than I expected. As I paid for the shoes, Dawson leaned over the counter, scribbling on the back of the store's business card. If you ever want more tips on running, or maybe a running partner, here's my number, he said with a casual grin. I laughed, slightly taken aback by his forwardness, but pleased nonetheless. Thanks, Dawson. Maybe I will, I replied, pocketing the card. True to his offer, Dawson was a fountain of running knowledge, and it wasn't long before our casual morning jogs became a regular part of my routine. Gradually, Dawson and I began spending time together outside of our runs. We'd grab coffee, catch a movie, and spend evenings chatting about everything and nothing in my apartment. Before we knew it, he had moved in, and life felt unexpectedly complete. However, when the conversation turned towards making our relationship official, Dawson hesitated. I think we're still too young, Gianna. We need to get to know each other better, he suggested. So, I embraced our situation, my new job, my evolving relationship with Dawson, and my morning runs. Life was unfolding on my terms, and I was determined to savor every moment. The tranquility of our Saturday morning was abruptly interrupted by the shrill ring of the phone. My stomach knotted as I saw the caller ID. It was Mom, who only called when things were dire. Hello, I answered, bracing myself for the bad news. Gianna, it's your dad. He's very sick. You need to come home. Mom's voice was terse, each word laden with urgency. Feeling Dawson's supportive squeeze on my hand, I quickly agreed. We'll leave right away. As we arrived at the grand house I grew up in, Dawson whistled softly. Wow, I didn't realize you grew up in a mansion. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Mom and Anna stood in the foyer, their expressions strained. Gianna, finally, Mom said coldly. Your sister and I are in the middle of something important. Nice to see you too, Mom, I replied dryly, introducing Dawson to their barely polite nods. Without waiting, I led Dawson to where Dad was resting. He looked so frail and pale in bed, and my heart clenched. Dad. I approached tentatively. Gianna, Dad's voice was a hoarse whisper. He motioned for me closer. I need to say something. I'm sorry for everything. I took his hand, tears welling up. It's okay, Dad. We're okay. We joined the others for dinner, but the atmosphere was unbearable. Mom and Anna casually discussed the inheritance as if Dad were already gone, their conversation filled with cold calculations. With the accounts, we should be set for quite a while, Anna remarked, her voice unnervingly light. I exchanged a disbelieving look with Dawson. Excuse me, I interrupted. Can we not do this right now? Dad's still here. Oh, Gianna, don't be so sensitive. We're just being practical, Mom chided dismissively. The meal couldn't end soon enough. Dawson and I excused ourselves, the pretense of civility too much to endure. As we drove away, relishing the silence after such a stifling dinner, Dawson broke the quiet. Gianna, I've been thinking. Marry me, he blurted out earnestly, his gaze intense. I was stunned, emotions swirling within me at his sudden proposal. What now? Yeah, why not? Life is short, we love each other, and we're happy. Let's do it. No big wedding, no fuss, just us. Dawson's simple proposal, coming just after the stark reminder of life's fragility, deeply resonated with me. Yes, Dawson, let's do it, I agreed enthusiastically. We didn't waste any time. The following week, we stood together at City Hall, exchanging vows in a simple ceremony. There were no guests, just an abundance of love and commitment. It felt profoundly right, like the perfect rebellion against my family's entrenched materialism. In the weeks that followed, the surreal mix of new marital bliss and the grim reality of my father's worsening health defined my days. I made frequent visits to see him, enduring the chilly receptions from Mom and Anna. During one visit, Dad's voice, a faint whisper, carried a surprising weight. "Gianna, when I'm gone, there'll be something for you. A sort of surprise," he said, his weary eyes flashing a moment of urgency. I squeezed his hand, choosing to focus on the present. "Let's not talk about that now, Dad. You need to rest," I murmured, hoping it was just the illness talking. Back at the house, Mom and Anna's conversations increasingly revolved around the inevitable aftermath of Dad's passing. "We need to think about the bills and what comes next," Mom declared one afternoon, her voice as cold and calculating as ever. She spent her days disappearing for hours into beauty treatments and consultations, while Anna, freshly graduated and entirely disinterested in employment, filled her evenings with social gatherings and her days with indolent sleep, oblivious to anything beyond her immediate gratification. The dreaded call came on a rainy Thursday morning. Mom's voice was emotionless as she delivered the news. "Your father passed away last night. We're arranging the funeral for this weekend." The news hit like a punch to the gut. I felt Dawson's arms wrap around me, his presence a small comfort against the vast emptiness swelling inside me. The funeral passed in a blur. People came and went, offering condolences and speaking of my father's kindness and integrity, traits starkly absent in my mother and sister. As the formalities wound down and we gathered in the living room, Dawson unexpectedly broached the subject of the inheritance. "So, what's going to happen with the inheritance? I just want to know what my wife will get." "It's not the time, Dawson," I hissed, my eyes pleading with him to drop the subject. But it was too late. The topic was out in the open, and Mom and Anna eagerly began outlining their plans for the assets, speaking as though Dad's will was already crafted to their benefit. "And the house," Dawson interjected, shifting the focus. "It should go to Gianna. It's only fair." Mom laughed, a harsh, jarring sound. "This house is for Anna and me. You two have no claim here," she declared, her gaze icy. Dawson's demeanor then changed. He turned to Anna with a sweetness that chilled me. "You know, Anna, you've really grown into quite the woman." "I always thought so." I stood frozen as the room descended into chaos, Mom and Anna flattered by Dawson's sudden attentions, oblivious to the deeper implications. I couldn't bear it anymore. With my heart breaking, I walked away, retreating to my father's room, seeking solace in the quiet and memories of a man who had tried to make things right. When I woke the next morning, still in my father's room, I resolved not to let the oppressive atmosphere of the house suffocate me. I headed to the kitchen, determined to keep my composure and face whatever came next with a newfound resilience. As I reached for the coffee that morning, Dawson appeared, blocking the refrigerator with a somber look on his face. "Gianna, we need to talk," he said, his voice sending a shiver down my spine. "What is it now, Dawson?" I braced myself for what I feared would be more bad news. Taking a deep breath, Dawson's next words floored me. "I want a divorce, Gianna. I've fallen for Anna. I'm going to marry your sister," he blurted out, avoiding my gaze. He handed me a stack of papers, divorce papers, already filled out. I stood frozen, the papers trembling in my hands. "This has to be some sick joke," I said, but the serious expression on his face told me it was all too real. I stormed out of the kitchen, calling for Anna and Mom. They walked into the living room, their faces painted with faux innocence. "I wanted to tell you, Gianna. I didn't want to go behind your back. That's why Dawson and I are being upfront now," Anna explained first. Mom nodded, adding, "It's very noble of them." I'm proud of Anna for handling this so maturely. The room spun around me as their words echoed, ball rising in my throat. Noble? Mature? You're talking about betrayal. I spat out, my words dripping with disbelief and hurt. At that moment, I knew what I had to do. I grabbed the divorce papers from the coffee table, signed them with a shaky hand, and threw them back at Dawson. You'll get your things by courier, I declared, my voice cold and detached. 3 weeks later, the day to read Dad's will had arrived. We gathered in the notary's office, the air thick with tension. The civility of my family couldn't mask their greed. Their eyes were hungry and calculating. The notary cleared his throat and began reading the will. To my daughter Gianna, I leave all my monetary assets, totaling $800,000. The room erupted. Mom's face twisted in rage as she screamed about her debts and the loans she had taken, expecting to pay them back with the inheritance. Anna shrieked at her, accusing her of being old and useless, claiming she needed the money for her lavish wedding with Dawson. Then, as if on cue, they all turned to me, their faces a grotesque mix of anger and desperation. You have to give us that money, Gianna. It's only fair. Mom yelled, tears streaming down her face, tears she hadn't shed at Dad's funeral. Dawson saw his chance and stepped toward me, arms outstretched, a rehearsed line of regret on his lips. Gianna, I've missed you. I only ever loved you. I recoiled as Anna grabbed him, pulling him back. You're mine now, she hissed, her nails digging into his shirt. The notary, disgusted, threatened to call the police if they didn't calm down. This is a legal proceeding, not a circus. Behave accordingly or leave. Before I walked out, they hurled curses at me, saying I would never be happy with the money. I looked them in the eyes, a sad smile on my lips. Happiness isn't something you buy or steal, it's something you build. And I'll build mine away from all of you, I said, my voice steady. With the inheritance from my father, I did something I had dreamed of for years. I started my own interior design company. Naming it was easy. I called it Charles's Designs, a nod to the man whose quiet strength had always inspired me. The business started small, just me and a rented space in a bustling part of the city, but word of mouth spread fast. My passion and skills poured into every project, ensuring that before long, Charles's Designs was a name associated with quality and integrity in the community. As my interior design business began to flourish, I found myself hiring staff, scouting larger office spaces, and sketching out expansion plans. Despite the successes, not every day was easy. One afternoon, while poring over fabric samples, an unexpected knock at my door caught me off guard. Peering through the peephole, I saw Dawson standing there, holding a huge bouquet of flowers, accompanied by that all-too-familiar smirk. I cracked the door just enough to talk without inviting him in. What do you want, Dawson? I asked, my tone cool. Gianna, baby, I made a huge mistake. I miss you. I know I messed up, but I know you, I know us. We were good together, he said, his voice soft, pushing the bouquet closer. I glanced at the flowers, then back at his face. We were good until you decided my sister was better, right? My voice was calm, but laced with ice. Look, that was a mistake. I was confused, but I'm here now for you, he pleaded, his eyes searching mine for a flicker of forgiveness. But there was nothing left to rekindle. Dawson, listen carefully. I wish you all the best, really, but there's no us. Not now, not ever again, I stated firmly. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off by stepping back and slamming the door in his face. Through the wood, I could hear his muffled protests, but they faded into the background as I returned to my work. Later, I heard through mutual friends that Mom and Anna had been forced to sell the house to settle their debts. They'd moved to a small, cramped apartment far from the luxurious life they had always prioritized over family. As for my business, it continued to grow, and with each successful project, I felt more vindicated in my decision to stand alone. The freedom of being my boss and building something from nothing gave me a sense of purpose and pride I'd never known before. The future was a canvas, and I was ready to paint it with broad, bold strokes. Each success was a testament to my resilience and the satisfaction of forging my path, free from the shadows of the past.